My intention, by the way, is what I want to unleash is delight in the beauty, wildness, and poetry of our incarnation.
But I'm gonna use that to introduce you, because that's a fucking hot ass mouthful, just like you, Queen. Okay. So I'm gonna now introduce the most beautiful, gorgeous Queen courtesan of all time, Krista Connerly. I guess today. And full disclosure, I know Krista personally because we were in a program together for 8 months or 27 years. I'm not sure. It was one of those time-space continuum bending kind of experiences. But I digress. I wanted to bring you on Unleashed, the podcast, because you are a queen who, if anything, personifies the unleashed. Unleashed. I just went to Old England for a moment. The unleashed feeling, tone inside of domesticity. Yeah, this is, and your intention to unleash, I'm going to quote this, unleash delight in the beauty, wildness, and poetry of our incarnation. And when you said it at first, I thought it was beauty, wildness was one thing. And then later I realized there might have been a comma, eat shoots and leaves. It's all about the pandas. What
it could be a big tangle. Better it's a big tangle. And
beauty, wildness, exactly.
And you extract it yourself. Yeah.
If anyone that I could think of would personify beauty, wildness, and domesticity, it would be you, my kitten. So can you please, tell us and the listeners and your fans what you mean by that?
Well, I've been on a spiritual journey for a long time, and because my mother had some trauma that she was dealing with when I was a teenager, and was suicidal, and she got into self-help, and so I got into self-help. And the way I internalized a lot of that self-help, because it was coming from a really masculine perspective, was to really try to transcend all of my experiences, not be in any of my experiences. And at a certain point, it just felt like the bar of just trying to transcend suffering is too low. I've always been stunned by beauty, by just the smells that you smell when you go outside, and the rain has been there, and that petrichor of the earth, or just the sun coming through the trees, that there's so many moments of beauty. And it feels to me like the feminine way of spirituality is to be more present, to be more in this body, to be more in this earth, and not to transcend. So I feel like there's so much delight and beauty and poetry to be had in our lives. And yet we're either mired in kind of the day-to-day systems, patriarchal systems that we're part of, so that we can't experience it. Or if we become spiritual, then we become part of this other system that's telling us to leave, all of the beauty and sensuality that's here for us. And I feel
leave your body, the body is sinful even.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We're sitting on our greatest source of power as women, literally. And
you mean our butts?
What's that?
Our butts.
Or our pussies. Yeah. And that really, what happens when we come into it? And it's, we get to experience the phenomenal gift of being in this world.
Wow. Okay. So first of all, you look like you're about 20. So I'm like, how do you find this in this wisdom? But I happen to know also that aside from whatever your, I guess, chronological age we'll call it, that you started very early seeking that wisdom. And often, as we know, it often does come through trauma and a reaching, not everyone does reach for it, especially at such a young age, when they might rather actually disengage from that reality and numb out, which is what a lot of people do. I did that choice. And I know that you did a lot of deep exploration. Do you want to talk about a little bit of that as well? Some of your early, what did that look like as a young teenager, as a woman, girl in the world? First of all, where were you?
I was, at that time, I was in Denver, Colorado.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the spirituality probably originally came from like a desire to numb out.
Mm-hmm.
Like it wasn't that I had specific noble aspirations or anything that made me special. It was just kind of a mix of not liking the place where I was, emotionally, physically, with my own self-love particularly, and wanting, and like, so both wanting to check out and then having this kind of context around me of like the spiritual growth, which, at that point in time really was about kind of checking out in a way.
Yeah.
It was about, getting somewhere else, so it was like this idealistic world that drew me into it in the first place, this kind of fantasy realm.
Okay. And how did that go for you?
And how did it go?
Yeah.
So, and it was mixed. I mean, it was also mixed with, I think what saved me in that was that there is an internal wildness to all of us. And so that wildness kind of like pulls you into the planet more, pulls you into the earth. Like, so the wildness in this case was like, I had such a hard time feeling loved from others that I was just like, fuck it, and then I became punk and then goth.
Okay, pause. Yeah, why were you having a hard time? You're adorable. Why were you having a hard time receiving love? Like elementary school, junior high?
I mean, I think everybody's got, some traumas that have happened in their life. And
okay, we don't have to talk about it. It's okay. You had trauma in your life.
I mean, yeah, it's
made
like
you isolated.
There's the things that affect you, I think, are just, like it. There's so many possibilities for that. I was separated from my mom when I was first born because I had jaundice. I was separated for 2 weeks, and that creates like a break in the mother bond.
Queen, so was I, babe.
Really?
Comment, yes. Mine was for 3 weeks. It was 21 days and because she almost died. Yeah. Wow. I know. I didn't know that birth story, but it does. You've seen how, like, they know now Western science has caught up, as usual, a little slow to how crucial that bonding period is. The babies aren't done cooking. They're not done cooking yet.
Yeah.
And we were just sitting there in those plastic containers with strangers, hopefully holding us, but how weird, right?
Yeah.
So the way that might have affected our nervous systems and development and brain, and for me, attachment, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So all of that. And so for you, it manifested as a hard time receiving. It's interesting. I think my reaction was bonding with everybody. Everybody was like everybody was my family or just try like everywhere trying. And, but also never really feeling it. That's why I always looking, even when I was married. So I never thought like I was as loved as I loved others. So this is very beautiful. So you were feeling this as a young teenager, as a young girl, teenager.
Yeah.
And it brought you to, see, for me, it went Christian. I went to like Young Life first there. And the wildness in me, I felt connected to the earth for sure. But the humanity around me was not connected to the earth. So it made me feel very isolated from them, especially as I went into adolescence and we weren't supposed to be climbing trees anymore.
Yeah.
And making forts in the woods, which is what I wanted to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for you, that wildness, you took that and I went kind of like, I'm going to try to fit myself into the boxes. You went the other way and said, I'm not going to go in that box.
I'm not going to, I'm not, I rebel. Like I'm going to say fuck you to you before you can say fuck you to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, for me, I think that experience and other, early experiences manifested as like, there's something innately wrong with me.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
So, so why would I even be worthy of love? So it was more like I couldn't even really give it to myself.
Yes.
And
So relating to this story.
yeah.
Okay. So yeah. And then can we talk about some of that exploration that you did in the looking? Yeah.
So then I, kind of got involved in this scene that was a little bit punk and a little bit goth, and a lot of my friends were homeless, and we were doing a lot of drugs. And my very first boyfriend, I mean, I think part of that like happened at the same time. And of course, love is its own like wilding project. And then Heartbreak, I mean, he totally, like, he was such a jerk. He was like, let's pretend to break up, but we'll really be together, so that he could date other people.
Oh my God. Oh,
Which he did. And then I was like, okay, we're really broken up, and then he hung himself. So there was like, just a lot of stuff kind of going on, a lot of like
you in high
a
school?
lot of that darkness.
Yeah. This is high school.
And yeah, this was high school. So I think we were 13 when I started dating, and
Wow.
I think 14 when I started doing drugs, and then 15 when he hung himself.
Oh, wow. That is a really accelerated maturation schedule.
Yeah. So,
Wow.
so
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, for me, it was like, I, I did the things because they were around, but that experience of doing acid, we would do it. I'd go out in nature and do it. And when I did that, there was just like, there were a couple of experiences that I had where I just really could drop into like that feeling of oneness, of like first there was a ringing in my ears, and sounded like all of a sudden the ringing changed to like, a million voices singing. And then all of those voices became one voice. And I just had that sense that we were like that deep body knowing that we were all one and that we were all connected. And that happened again on a camping trip. And I also want to say thank you to the tree. There was a tree on that camping trip as I was like walking to the water. There was a tree that just like took my hair and like tucked it behind my ear. And I like looked around like, who just did that? And I saw like there was nothing around me but a tree. There was a tree branch that was sticking out. And it did that on that trip, like I think three separate times. As I walked past it, it like tucked my hair behind my ear. And that's to me like what beauty is that belonging that the world gives you, that like feeling of belonging in the world. Because it's like, it's both, it's of the everyday, it's made of the everyday, of like the material that's here, and yet it somehow transcends the everyday. Like they're both together, that transcendence and that earth, the earth, just
right. The energy
materials of our existence.
Totally. I get that. Right. We are animated by whatever the energies of the beings or the things that, whatever the name is, the human names that we put onto this indescribable whatever. And then it seems very clear that all of the things that are on the planet are charged with the energy it's the mycelium network connecting everything. So totally.
Yes.
That's profound and beautiful. So beautiful. So, wow. Now you had this, I would say, a pretty extraordinary experience, in such an early time as your brain is still really forming, and your ideas of who you are and what the world is and all of that is still so nascent and still like really forming and plastic. And you had such a deep experiences, and I can see.
Yeah, and I don't recommend it as a way in.
No, we could just not have that accelerated course. Thank you. But apparently your soul shows.
And because there were times when it went the other way too.
Yeah. But you really picked a speed course apparently for your soul. If we are choosing these lives, not that you chose that. So you So now you're here, and I'm looking at a woman who
I do believe I chose it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I choose to believe that also. And that and that means that then everything that you experience is a gift, including all of the shit, because it's all part of like the journey that your soul is craving and created. And so, for me, the fun part now is like, how do we co-create with that consciousness of whatever is happening, that we're choosing some element, and maybe we're even just choosing the path through that same karma. Can borrow from all the words from all the different practices and philosophies. But when you're talking about pretty intense human experiences in the 3D, as you're navigating stuff that's clearly not 3D, right? The nature and the wildness and divine and who we are as humans, you're just, I feel like as we're coming into the adolescence and the maturity of our human bodies is often the further we get away from that wildness and that connection to the divine. So you had this crash like course into, here's how you can get really fucking close to the divine, is death. And now I'm looking at a woman who's so grounded and embodied that I don't know if you were always that way. I get the sense that you were always this person and that you always were a grounded person in your body. I don't know. And I'm sure there were variations, but all of that experience, which was when you were so young and taking yours through education, I know you had a really high very, to me, very high level, exciting academic life and academics and professional life as a professor, teacher, and that whole journey into the world of academics is its own whole other thing and part of your brain. And to excel in that level and that level of 3D acknowledgement of whatever our brains can do is astonishing. But to me, what's even more astonishing is that you were able to operate on that level of the 3D in a planet, going through all the systems, patriarchal academia, checking boxes, getting degrees, to getting certain grade point averages, being this person. That takes a lot of not spiritual. That takes a lot of like human body, pencil to paper, printers, keyboards, shit like that, right? And you seem to have now moved beyond that, even into something that coaching is like combining all of it. It seems like to me, your creativity, the wildness, the devotion to the divine, and the beauty and finding it all within. And am I getting that right? Is that you've kind of found a way to bring it all together? Yeah. Well, and also I want to just like, as a mother, you're doing it the same thing with the child, sort of as a similar imbuing these practices into the child as you do into your clients, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah. So I'll start with the first thing that you asked. And yes, I think that well, a couple of things came up as you were talking. The first thing was that I feel like I was able to do all of those things because I wasn't in control, because my body was in control of me and I wasn't in control of my body. So like, as I was going through these programs, like like I would cry almost every crit. I would just cry. Like there's just, my body's always like been very emotive in a way that sometimes like it keeps its knowledge even away from my head. So like it does its own thing, like it does its own releases, it does its own stuff. And then I feel, terribly silly or ashamed or whatever, not anymore, but at the time. But I also feel like it does its work. Like I've been lucky that it's always done its work.
Wow.
Which has made me into which has taken a really long time to accept, because nobody wants to be the emotional. I mean, right. That one of the ways that we had our power taken away from us is like all the emotion stuff is bad. And so in those systems and be the one that's like always crying. It's just,
so well bragged. And also that you did stay connected then to your wildness that your body could move through it. And it's so genius that your body kept it from your brain. Well, your brain was off busy getting multiple degrees in fine art. Is that right? Yeah. Fine art. And I'm at higher educational institutions in America. It's really astonishing. To me, it sounds like juggling. It sounds like juggling, plates.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
the work that I was doing, like getting to study fine art, I mean, come on, that's amazing. That's such a privilege to be able to get to study that. And I was lucky that my mom was always like, whatever you want, whatever you want. And I paid for it all. She didn't support that part of it, but
Yeah.
which I'm still paying for,
Oh.
by the way. But yeah, I like I got to explore the ideas that I was interested in. And the ideas that I was interested in were so much about like, how can you disrupt the status quo with desire, and specifically with female desire? So, like, what happens when you take your attention and you put it on, for instance, like a bus ride? And like, how can you pull the sensuality out of that experience so that you can become more present in that experience and just feel more of yourself? And then it was also like these experiments with like love. Like, I would choose a different person every day to fall in love with. And then I would write them a love letter, but I wouldn't give it to them. I gave it to the librarian at the Carnegie Public Library, because I was in school at Carnegie Mellon at the time. And then she like pulled out two words from each letter, and then gave them a number in the card catalog, which there was a nice, like, physical card catalog at the time. And then people could find them among the stacks. So it was like a way to kind of like take the experiences that like we'll often find them when in love, that we'll have the ability to be present and to give our attention and to like see the poetry and the beauty when we're in love. But we don't often find it for ourselves when we're out of love, or at least we haven't been. I think we're at a place now where we are, where I think so many more people are interested in those experiences of pleasure and beauty.
So true, so true. And pause. Yes. And also like, right, like, because you could be in love with someone, and then this idea is that they're the source of that love instead of it's like coming from you. So then when you don't feel that love, then you get mad at the person that you were just in love with because they're somehow failing to make you feel the way you want to feel.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of how we model our relationships in this culture, right? That is the other person's responsibility to make you feel a certain way and take care of you, all that shit. So what you talk about in that feeling of being in love and how that's in you, that feeling is in me. It's in my body. Like that was the biggest discovery for me at some point. Like, oh, it's in me. Right. So that means I have that feeling anytime.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a man, the object, or even a love object. It could be just anything. That's so beautiful. But I'd like to just pause there for a moment and go back because you, as an art project, chose a different person each day to fall in love with, wrote a love letter to that person, didn't give it to that person that you wrote it about, but instead gave it to the librarian at Carnegie, the Carnegie Library, and then the librarian chose to pick words from that then identified it and cataloged the letters into the library system. So someone might just come across them, or someone could potentially seek them out, but that they were just there to be discovered, little gems of written love to a person in the middle of the library. That is so genius. That is so creative and brilliant and fucking awesome and beautiful. Oh my God, Krista. Wow. Okay, sorry. I had to just go back to that story. I didn't feel that we got enough time on that one. Okay, cool project. So those were what's an example of one of your projects?
So I mean, so that was like, who doesn't, that's so lucky to be able to do something like that, right? Like it wasn't hard to like get to explore your own interests and your own voice. I mean, it is hard to be true to it, I think, and to find it and to believe in it. But
and to pass the bar.
And I had plenty, of I still have plenty of those moments. But like when you're actually in the conversation of something that's like meaningful and interesting to you, like, that was just a beautiful opportunity to get to study that there.
Yeah. So cool. So you kept your wildness even in the institutions that were, I mean, to me, it's
My body kept my wildness, but my brain wouldn't have. Yeah.
most artists. Yeah. I mean, most artists that I know that have been in art school have experienced the opposite of wilding in their art school experience. And so, yeah, it's really genius of your body. Okay, great. So did all that, then was in that world. And then tell me what brought you to coaching. How did you get to there instead of, was there a moment when you said, I'm done with academia, or did life happen, or can you share?
There was a moment in 2009, actually, when I had been in academia for 10 years. And my, I had been teaching, and then I had also run a digital media and photography program at this place called Anderson Ranch Art Center. And I left that.
Well bragged. Sorry. Well bragged.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was an amazing place to get to meet like really amazing artists. And it was also a crap load of work and didn't have any space for my own creative practice. So I left to go back to teaching. I moved to Oregon here to teach at Oregon State University. And as my 2-year position, and it was like a ridiculous thing to do because I was like leaving this like prestigious full-time position to do a little 2-year stint somewhere. And then as I was applying for it to become a tenure track position, I just found myself crying again.
Yeah.
And so
telltale tears.
Yeah, tears are
good indication. Good indicators.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they're my nice little compass, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I decided, I won't do this. And so then I spent, since 2009, a long time kind of on the journey of figuring out exactly how this would all materialize, like what the shift would be. As I just, there was a big change in education while I was in there, from students going from being really interested in learning to becoming more like consumers. And just those kinds of deep conversations and helping people find their artistic voice and like realize their projects, their works that were meaningful to them, like that just wasn't happening as much. And so it wasn't as meaningful for me. So I wanted to do that, but I wanted to do it in a different way. And it took me like a really long time, like years, and of just like feeling like I was floating around and, trying different things. And, but at one point, like the words came to me, like you have to be gracious with change. And so it was like 8 years of being gracious with change. And during that time, I did a web design business so that I could make money while I was trying to figure out like, what do I really want? Yeah. And I had a baby, and that was the thing. That was the thing. That was the catalyst. Because it was, I had severe anxiety, 7 months pregnant, maybe a reaction to a drug, or maybe just timing, or, old intergenerational traumas coming up or whatever. Yeah. Like so severe, I couldn't sleep. Like I felt like I had to walk out of my skin. I couldn't sit for a meal. It was very, I had thrown around the term like, oh, I'm feeling anxious about this before. And that was the first time I realized like, oh my God, like this is what real anxiety feels like. And, and so then when I had a child, when he was born, there was like a beautiful, horrible constellation of events that had transpired that left me really vulnerable to postpartum anxiety and depression. And so being a new mom was really the dark night of my soul. Like it was the hardest thing. that I've ever done. And part of it, like you talk about them, you just said the mycelium network. And it's like, part of it, I think, really is because we've created this model of motherhood where it's like we've been ripped out of our mycelium network. There's like no support for, like, we've just decided that we have this like individual little nuclear family that's outside of anything, and that everything falls on the two parents, and
We know why.
mostly the
Why.
mother,
Yeah.
that, that's breastfeeding. And and I want to give kudos, like my husband's amazing, and there's so many men that have stepped up with childcare and household stuff, but it's still the structure is a deeply patriarchal structure. It's not working for anybody. There's no community.
No.
Like, it takes a village to raise a child. Okay, yes, where's their number? Like, there's no help.
There's no village, and we've taken away the village, and they separated the women because we know why. But
separated the women.
Yeah, keep them isolated, and then so then they, right, because if you can't figure out breastfeeding and your baby is undernourished, it's like, how are you going to go out and question patriarchy?
Yeah,
get your real work done. So so this is so you were right in the middle of all of it, and I bet that just motivated you probably even more to fucking
so it was like, deep insomnia, hallucinogenic like insomnia.
Wow.
And feeding difficulties, so that there were an hour and a half windows in which to try to sleep, and so deep sleep anxiety, and just a real feeling of like, if I survive, I won't have given what I need to give to my child, so they won't survive. And if they survive, there's no way that I will survive.
Yeah.
So like that feeling of just there's no way for both of us. And and society has chosen the child, and I chose the child, and but it really, like, I just felt like my whole self was annihilated. Not just my interests or my hobbies or the things I like to do, but like my deep physical needs just could not even be met in motherhood, in new motherhood. And then I had just started to come out of it when the pandemic hit. And again, it's like, now there's no school, now there's no daycare or anything. So, yeah.
And you survived.
And I survived. And so, but that was the thing, like coming up against, when kids, like, they take you to a psychological place that is completely unfamiliar.
Yeah.
And potentially deeply beautiful and deeply painful,
right,
and sometimes simultaneously. And
this is like the mother wound conversation, like how was your mother, but then also how are you as a mother, and how do you ever do motherhood without feeling your own wound, your own incapacity, your own mistakes, where you wish that you could have done more, been more.
Yeah.
But the unavoidable trauma of our culture, of being a mother in our culture, as we were talking about.
Yeah.
You might have the consciousness, but our culture doesn't. So how are you shepherding this being? And don't give up your sensitivity, but like, can't be sensitive in this world. So, figure that one out, So now when, as a coach, and you're unleashing, you're doing all of this wilding in yourself, all through these stories, as a artist, as a mother, as a teenager, and as a coach. And so I get that. Well, actually, we didn't really talk about it as a mother. We talked about it being in motherhood, but then you now have a child who's now school age, that you have to navigate the school system of America. Don't get me started. And so you're doing that. And I think most children are born sensitive. Some are more sensitive than others. Some of the beings that come through, I think, have thinner skin suits,
Yeah.
And it seems like maybe because of evolution and our parenting and collectively that we're moving towards this time where you aren't going to need those big, thick skin suits to go out and chop down forests to build your log cabin. Now you don't have to fight the elk or whatever that you had to do. Probably didn't fight elk, but you had to go do things that were big with your body.
To shoot elk.
Shoot elk and carry it on your back. So now it's not that. And it's more important that we do have that sensitivity to relate to each other and expand this mycelium network and take us out of this old model. But we're not in the new model yet. So how's it going?
Yeah.
I got a couple of words of advice we can drop in soundbite for.
What became apparent to me that what my kid needed was what I needed. Like, that the way that his way of being in the world, like, is meant to specifically push the exact buttons that need to be pushed in order for me to grow. But also that, like, I feel like there's a territory now that's just coming into being where, there's parenting advice that's like, how do you take care of the kid and how do you make the kid well? And then there's like motherhood self-care advice, which is, just ridiculous. Like, we don't have the any support system for mothers to actually engage in self-care, and we're just pushing it back on them to take care of themselves.
And we're doing it in the form of take baths and drink wine. It seems like it's all about wine.
Exactly. A lot of it's wine. A lot of it's trying to, you gotta cope. It's all coping to get and trying to get out of, and it is. And there is some amount of that, like, I'm not saying that that's bad, but like, I noticed for me that our kid is very sensitive, so beautifully sensitive. But also, like, unlike me as a child who was also sensitive, like my brain is what they call more of a possum brain. So when I'm like overstimulated, I like, shut down, go in. And his brain is watchdog brain, which is like, he gets overstimulated and he's like, and so for me, that was so triggering, for a bunch of reasons. One is that it's hard on your nervous system to like feel attacked. Two is that, like, it felt, because I was going this way, because that's my sense of what safety is, like what he was doing felt unsafe. Like, I had made that decision as an early age that you don't stand up for yourself like that, because that is not safe. So he was also kind of like the medicine for what I need.
Yes.
And then, and all of that is because, my mother was very angry when I was, a baby and a child and an adolescent, because she had been raped by her father and molested by her uncle at 5 years old and repeatedly raped by her father as a teenager. And so she had a lot of stuff on her plate to deal with, and a lot of anger that hadn't been looked at yet. Until she became suicidal when I was a teenager. And so, and then it was like I was back in that place of being a kid, but I'm the mom, and I have a 2-year-old who's like attacking me and yelling at me.
Yeah.
So there's so much advice about parenting, and there's a lot of really great advice. But one of the things they talk about is stay listening. So like, you stay there and you're present for your kid who's like yelling and screaming at you. And I would try to do that. And then we had a counselor at one point. I was like, so what do you do when he has a tantrum? And I said, well, if I don't get triggered and yell back at him or leave the room, which is my, like, usually I'm just like, I got to get out, after 20, 30 minutes, I leave. Then I just try to stay and listen compassionately. And she's like, well, you're probably pissing him off more because he doesn't know how to get to where you are from there. And what I realized too is that it's an incredible disservice to him to pretend like I'm calm if I'm not calm. because that's confusing as hell
Very
to like
confused.
see someone who's like pretending to be an emotion, but you can tell
Yeah.
because our nervous systems aren't entrained that they're not actually calm.
Yeah.
So when I started taking care of my emotional needs within the situation,
Yeah.
then I saw things really start to shift.
What does that look like?
Like one of the processes that I use is tapping, EFT, the emotional freedom technique. So you like go through these points on your body, these meridian points, and you talk about what's going on. You just become present to your feelings. That's how I use it. And so one day he was in the middle of one of his tantrums about, he was really upset because we gave him the thing that he wanted. Those were a lot of the tantrums. I want to carry the dinner in. Okay, here it is. No, I don't want to. Okay, here it is. Okay, you don't have to. No, I want to. So it was like these tantrums that are just like, I have no idea how to solve this problem because it's obviously not this. And so he had been doing that for 30 minutes. And I finally was just like, I feel so frustrated too. Like I need to take a lap around the house. And then I was just like, God, I just wish we could sit down to dinner. Like I just wish that I wish I could control people. And he goes, and then just kept going like, I wish Papa would do what would say. And I wish people would listen to me. And I wish I could control what Papa did. And my kid goes, I want to control everyone. And it was just like the same things that he was dealing with are like the same thing. Like there's such a beautiful intersection. And when you start taking care of yourself, like really being present to your actual emotions and not to what you think you're supposed to be, like according to some parenting article about being Zen all the time.
Yeah.
And it's like they start to get their needs met because they're seeing like a real human in a real situation and how you deal with it. And then also their mirror neurons are so strong. It's like they're tapping too. They don't even need to do it.
Right. And that's so beautiful to model it because the whole point, which I think most of parenting personally, just to be clear, I've had no biological children of my own. I have not had my own children, but I have a lot of opinions about parenting. And it seems like mostly it misses the idea that the whole main thing of parenting is modeling. Like the kids just are going to do what you do. It doesn't matter what the fuck you say or what your little structures being grounded. Like none of that had anything to do. Like getting grounded didn't like teach me anything. That was the go-to for my mom's discipline because she didn't know there was no context. And so, but understanding like trying to convey her frustration as a mother and to me, but like also, so there was never a way to do it. And I like the idea that the self-care isn't, because I think we often are like this new programming is, okay, self-care. I'm going to go do self-care, which is something separate. It's like girls' night was introduced as a thing that has a capital G and a capital N, and it's separate somehow from the rest of your life. And you make a special time and maybe it happens, I don't know, once every 3 months or 6 months, or I don't know, maybe with one. So anyway, this big special thing and you go out and and it has a time period. Like what? This is when you're supposed to be with your people. Okay. And so it's the same with self-care. Now we have wine o'clock and we have the bath beads and we have the yoga class and the breath work and all of the things, but that's all something you do. You put on the outfit, you get in your car and you drive out, leave your house and you go do this self-care thing somewhere else. Then you come back to your life and you do your life. But what you're talking about is actually self-care is just being fucking truthful with your body. Maybe just being real, like your body knows, your body would keep it separate from your brain in those moments in art school. But now the integration of your brain and your mind and your body so that you can be like, actually, I am really frustrated right now. And that's true. I'm tapping as a technique to be in my body, but you're saying what is true. So it's connecting this into the heart, which your son's nervous system immediately responds to because he can recognize the authenticity, the genuineness. His system recognizes that in your system, as you said. And we all do that with each other. We recognize that even if we don't know the words or it's not quite clear, we We know when we're feeling confused because someone's telling us, hey, turn it all upside down, turn that smile upside down and be positive. And you're like,
Yeah.
God, this person's angry. I don't know why I feel so like. So what you're talking about is the best, most deepest, really, the self-care, which to me is just being in our truth with our bodies, like bringing it all into one.
Yeah.
And I don't think we still even have the slightest idea how to do that, which is why we have to put on $100 yoga pants and go to a place.
Which, like, maybe you don't need whatever. Yeah. It is so important to have time away from your child.
Totally. No, I
And to do all of those self-cares, all of the things that make you happy are amazing.
Yes.
And we live in a culture where there's hardly any time for that. And you have to make a choice between taking care of yourself and taking care of the kid. And so there's like guilt that goes along with it. And I absolutely believe in all of those things that like help you feel regulated and more connected. And it's almost like you have to seed them in the everyday. You have to like start these little seeds in order to have the time almost. Because then you can start like rearranging your life around more ease and flow. Like more creativity comes to me because parenting, you have to be so creative. Like my kid will outsmart me most of the time unless like I get some kind of like intuitive guidance.
Yeah.
And then it's like, then I'll be able to say something that will actually get him to brush his teeth.
Yeah.
Or go to bed or whatever. But if I am not open to that creativity, that like inner wisdom, then it's going to be like friction and struggle. But so I have to like put that in my everyday. And the way, like I would say my biggest thing that I would advise any mom to do is set an alarm for 3 times a day and just like take a breath, like notice what you're feeling in your body. You can name it, or it can just be a sensation, and you take like 2-3 breaths is all you need. If you have 10 breaths, take 10, but you just feel into whatever it is you're feeling and just start like the practice of being with yourself. Because it's like that practice that helps you to seed that connection for yourself. And then those moments can become bigger and you start to have more time because there's more ease and more flow in how you're able to respond to your child. Yeah.
I love that. That is so beautiful. Exactly. Because, and I didn't realize I was being disparaging. I didn't mean to be disparaging around like yoga classes and breath work. I love all that shit. I suck it all up. I'm like, I love it. So, and it is so important to have the time away. And it is important to make that community because that's where we go to find our communities, by the way.
Yeah.
Go find them in those places. So all of that is beautiful. But this idea of it doesn't just have to exist there, that we can have it here, and that actually self-care is just being present. Just like you're saying, being present with your kid, that's the biggest gift. And the way to really be present with your kid is to be present with yourself. How can you actually be present with your kid?
Yeah.
You're pretending. That's not being present.
Yeah.
It's really profound.
And because the way they behave, again, it's like so perfectly tuned into your triggers. It's like easy to not want to feel it.
Yeah.
And to realize like there's a whole dialogue that you're having with yourself that often you're not even listening to because you're just trying to like even.
And we're taught not to. We're taught not to.
Even I just remember feeling like a mouse going on like a little wheel. And like, I was even using compassion as a way to like get it to stop. Like, the being present with him as a way to get it to stop instead of actually being present. And I can't be present with him unless I'm like, oh, I'm noticing I feel panic. Like I'm noticing I'm feeling like I'm a horrible mom. Like I'm noticing like, what is it that I'm actually feeling? And I can only like really truly be present to his outrage or whatever he's feeling from that place. But if I'm like, okay, I'm going to breathe deep and I'm going to be present for him, and okay, you're okay, baby, I got you. It's just like, it's not, he can feel it.
Yeah,
He's
totally.
so, he knows.
It's so true. It's so true. And it's actually true for all of us on a larger scale. We just are mostly trained to not to ignore those feelings when you're with another person and you feel like, oh, that feels weird or not right. So you really beautifully said, Queen. Wow. And I just want to ask you, is we're gonna have to wrap up pretty soon, but I just could talk to you for hours and hours and days. What as a mother, we're talking about unleashed, and really the child already is wild, but they're going into these boxes, the little boxes of our culture, the school, the thing, the grade, the type, the whatever. How are you navigating that with the wilding and the beauty and the poetry? And there are more options for kids now, I know, with different, you can pay money if you have money to private schools, and maybe there are homeschool, and some people have options like these things. But how are you finding that in this late stage capitalism, as patriarchy is crumbling around us, and you're shepherding this soul through through the pillars crumbling around him? How's that going? Like, in terms of, I mean, he's got his thing. He's really just starting his journey in the school system.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, two things I guess come to mind. One is that to really trust his experience. And that means like, he came here, he's on this planet in this time, and it's not up to me to like make it exactly perfect and how I would want it to be. And he might go to a public school and he might have experiences there that are not great, and like, that's okay. Like, I don't need to be in control of making sure that everything is like perfectly aligned with my values, that everything is perfectly, like, there can be freedom and ease around how I view his experiences. Like, when he was a baby and we were having the feeding difficulties, and all the lactation consultants would be like, well, just pop him off after 20 minutes, he should be done feeding. Anything after that, he's just gonna be like, okay, but he's screaming, if I pop him off a breast at 20 minutes and put him on the next. And I remember going to the lactation consultant, and she was like, we gave him she had breast milk there, so she gave him 2 more bottles of breast milk, and he, for the first time, like, just fell asleep peacefully. And she said, you can trust his experience, like, you can trust him. She didn't say you could trust his experience, she said you can really trust him, trust that what he's saying is true. And so I've thought of that, like, he's had experiences at school, going to school during the pandemic, and a lot of kids are trying to like adjust to all of the stuff that's going on in their lives and all of the stress that's out there, and so they're bringing it into the classroom, and so he would come home like with a little scratch on his cheek or whatever. And I want to try to control those experiences, but those experiences are also like, I trust that he's kind of drawn them to his life for a reason.
Right.
And the only thing I can do is just be here as best as I can for them, and then make decisions to the best of my ability, but I don't need to worry so much about it. I don't need to worry too much about it. Like, part of being a human is you hazard yourself to the world, and you let the world do like its magic, and give you the experiences that you need to have the specific set of superpowers that you need to have. And